Great. Thank you, Gary, and hello, everyone. I'm excited to be here today. This area of text and content analytics is pretty exciting to me. I've been in this ECM space for 25 years as a management consultant, and nothing has excited me more than what analytics can do to help out these systems. So hopefully you're going to enjoy this. And again, if you have any questions, just feel free to put them in your question area there. So big data. Let's not get excited about big data. For me, it's really all of this content that's in our network, right? And that a company owns today. So today, for me, big data is your document management systems, your intranets, your email, your text chats, all your social information. So there's a lot of content that's out there today that companies really aren't managing in a way that's allowing them to create these better business decisions, right? So this analytics that we're talking about here, it refines that raw big data unstructured content into enriched information, right? It refines and curates it. And really the bottom line is that, we want to create better business decisions in our company. And that's really what this is all about. It's like, if there's a way to do that, a way to help companies to get to that area of making better, intelligent decisions, that's what we want to do. So from the kind of the, I don't know, from the talk about big data, you always see volume, velocity, variety, and veracity, and it applies here. So volume, what we're hearing is that your unstructured data is doubling every 2 years. So that's a whole lot of content for organizations to bring in. And we know, if you've been in the ECM space, you know that no one tags all that content. It's, from my experience, maybe, 5% of it's tagged, and that's probably the records that are in the organization. The velocity is this data in transit, right? So this is, it's applicable in the sense that, if you're making business decisions and you have all of this kind of social information coming in or other types of information, it could be machine logs, it could be any type of unstructured that's coming in all the time, and you want to be able to understand what is happening, right? So if all of a sudden you get all this negative sentiment, something might have happened yesterday. So the ability to do kind of a streaming analytics component is pretty critical, to help you to get that information at hand. And from the variety standpoint, you all know there's everything, from the social standpoint, there's a lot of different types of information from your document types. You have a lot of different types of content. You have email, you have just about, MP3 multimedia type files. There's a lot of content and a lot of different forms out there. And again, analytics helps to kind of parse those out and provide, what you want to see. And then this veracity is really pretty important. This is that data in doubt, right? So if you're trying to make business decisions and you have a lot of content that you can't trust, you're not going to be able to make a good business decision, or it's going to take you a long time to find that content that's not in doubt. Right? We're going to be talking about rot towards the end of this presentation, and we can talk a little bit about how that affects everything. So let's very quickly at a high level, we'll just discuss traditional versus content analytics. Most companies today are pretty mature in their traditional analytics, right? Their BI, their dashboards. And that traditional analytics gives us the who, what, where, and when, right? It tells us who sold what or who purchased what, when it happened, where it happened, when it happened. So all that data gives us really good information on what's going on in our organization, what's going on with sales, what's going on with our products. It's good information, but it's not everything. This content analytics space gives us kind of this context of what's going on, right? The root cause of some of our problems. And it's about the how and the why, right? Why did that happen? Why did we lose sales? How did production, go down by 20% last month? So this content analytics is that area that's going to help us to get those type of answers. So again, this is a very straightforward slide. The what is happening is the structured data analytics. It's the BI. It's the dashboard. It's telling us that sales are missed, or sales revenue decreased, or all that structured data. And then the why it's happening is really all of the that content, that unstructured content that helps us to understand why things are happening and what's happening. So sentiment is a big player in this space. If you want to understand the voice of the customer, it's really important to understand and get a hold of all that social information so that you can see what the customer is thinking and what he's saying, and it really helps you to move your marketing organization in a number of different ways. But why it's happening could also be used in a number of other industries, right? There's kind of production houses, right? So if production fails, or falls short, why did that happen? And text analytics can help. They can look at the logs, and they can look at all of this other structured, unstructured information that is giving us insights. Things like fraud, right? And insurance and banking. Content analytics can help to create those correlations and help you to understand, why or where or how is this fraud happening, and it can delve into that content and give you those that type of understanding that you need. And there's a lot of other applications. There's things like diseases breaking out. Well, if you have all that content available to you, you can find out why it's happening. So that's kind of the difference between the two, and really to get true value, you want to integrate your structured with your unstructured analytics and come up with a dashboard like this in the center here. So the analytics pipeline. So this is a very simple but a really good kind of picture of how text analytics works. So you have this pipeline along the bottom, and it does your language identification, right? It understands what language it is. It does the linguistic analysis so that it breaks apart your structure of your sentences. It understands what's a noun and a verb, and it breaks that all down. And then you can do things like named entity recognition. You can use your content classification built into this, and you can create all your custom annotators. So in this example, we have a list of analytics on the left-hand side, and we have a document, and then we have this structured data on the right. So what analytics does is it takes that document in the middle and it runs it through this pipeline, and it uses things like entity extraction, which pick out names, locations, company names, and you can see how it put Mr. Jones, right? It found the person, Mr. Jones, and it found XYZ Corporation, and it found Texas. Then you have things like dictionary lookup. So this is where a taxonomy is a really helpful tool. If you have a taxonomy in your company, and hopefully you do, because that's a real critical component of having success in any type of ECM space. But dictionary lookup is really using one of your facets out of your taxonomy to find those terms in your document. In this case, I just put Android phone as an example of a product. So it'll find that Android phone, it'll place it in this, it'll create that piece of metadata for that. Pattern matching, here I used $400. So it can find any type of pattern, whether it be a social security number, a dollar amount, an address. It's really easy to find patterns in your content. So we see price is $400 on the right. And then sentiment analysis. So sentiment analysis is really interesting, and it's growing by leaps and bounds today. There's a lot of different models that are out there that you can use. You can build your own models with rules, and really those rules are based on kind of the order of the words, right? Your sentence structure, and we'll look at that in a second, how that works. So again, this is just a very kind of simple illustration of how that analytics pipeline works, how it automatically creates all of this metadata on the right. It's taking that unstructured information and it's creating structured. Boy, I wish I had something like this back in the old days when I was doing ECM. It would have made life a lot easier. So in my mind, there's two areas of text analytics, and one is content analytics, which Forrester says is extracting and analyzing information and patterns in unstructured collections. And when you think about content analytics, what that does is it identifies trends, it identifies patterns in your information, it creates correlations and anomalies. It helps you to understand your business context. It understands the deviations of what's going on, and And it's really easy to see what's going on over time in this data mining and content analytics space. And then from the text analytics standpoint, really text analytics is the foundation of content analytics. You need to do the text analytics first. And that is basically the annotation of this unstructured information. So when we think about annotation, it's, if you look on the right-hand side of the screen, you see social security number, org, name. These are the annotations that it creates. So when you create a social security number, we were using pattern matching, right? So when you create that and you're crawling all the content on your network, what it does is if it finds a document with that string of characters that matches social security number, it puts that meta tag social security number there, and it pulls in all of the items that it found that matches that pattern, and it pulls them into your metadata. So now this metadata is automatically filled out for you. So it's really easy now to see this content, to get a hold of it. You can do things like, you can create facets from any one of these analytics. So there's a lot of value in using these text analytics. And on the left-hand side, you see there's a lot of different types: tokenization, language ID, document structure parsing, sentiment, named entity, relationship detection. So there's a lot of things you can do with your text analytics to get to the information that you want to find in your documents. Very, very powerful. So this is an example that I built using IBM's content analytics. I think it's called Watson Explorer Analytics today. But this is a very simple application that I built as a prototype for e-discovery. It's using the Enron content, which is really good if you're doing e-discovery presentations. So a couple of things here I want to show you. So up in this facet, we see normalized date. So again, this is an analytic, and what it does is it finds a date mentioned in the document. So you compare that to the date it was authored or the date it was modified. It's a different meaning, right? Your normalized date is the date that's found inside the document. So now I can click on any one of these dates up here, and it would add it to the search criteria and allow me to find that information. You see under our facet tree, we have our person title, which is a different type of an analytic, a title, so it'll find different types of things. In locations, we have category tree where you're able to ingest your taxonomy into this, and that really enhances your ability to categorize your content, to find content. So if you have a taxonomy, again, which is a very good thing if you're in ECM, we can plug that into an analytics tool, and it really brings a lot of value. We also have flags here. So for example, in the e-discovery, where you're doing things like holds on content, right? You're able to create flags for different names and topics and holds. And when you find that content, you tag it, and then other people just have to click on that particular tag and they'll get that information right at their fingertips. Again, we have on the right-hand side here, we have this dynamic facet chart, which is a document cluster. So we can automatically do document clustering to find these kind of topics that are prevalent in this content repository, and it'll list those. And again, we can use those as search criteria just by, you click on the government and it would add it to the search up here. And we have custom word cloud. So it'll kind of go through your content and create a custom word cloud. And again, you can use these as part of your search criteria. So just an interesting way to do search. There's a lot of different ways once you have a tool like this installed to find different types of information. So here I'm breaking out this facet window for organization. And what this does, this shows us correlation, right? So correlation, it shows something significant, right? It shows something that might require further investigation. And in this tool, it actually shows the correlation by the coloring. So, if it's the darker red color, it's more correlated to this search that you have up here. So again, it kind of goes beyond search, right? Where you're trying to find significant things, you're trying to do investigation on your content, you're trying to understand what's out there. And this is just one of the areas that helps that through this correlation aspect. Now, search front end to ECM. This isn't a very good picture illustration, but I wanted to talk about this for a second because it's something I'm really excited about. I think the future of ECM I know a lot of you might shoot me down and hang up on me, but I think, because this content's doubling, right? And because you have content coming from your social and your texting and all of these different areas where this content's coming in, I think in the future it's going to be almost like this big data repository that you're putting analytics against, and then you have these search front ends that allow you to get to that information easily, right? And to use, a lot of those tools that we just showed you in that last search application. So again, I don't think many people are doing this today. I've actually downloaded Solar, and I'm prototyping an application to kick this off and to see how far we can take it. But I really think this is the future of ECM is taking all that content, putting your analytics against it, and then this way you have, multiple. Again, being a consultant for 25 years, I've worked with a lot of major Fortune 10, Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies, and they all have multiple repositories. They all have a hard time finding information, and they all have, it gets into people managing content in their email systems. I just came from an oil and gas company where a lot of their content is being managed in their email because they don't trust the system that they have, and there's a lot of issues out there. So again, when you think about all those issues related to repositories and content, I think this is the future, and so it'll be interesting to see where it goes. Hopefully I'll have a webinar on it soon. So now let's talk a little bit about auto classification. So this is using a tool from SmartLogic that does auto classification, and we're inside of SharePoint here. Now what's interesting about this, SharePoint is such a crazy repository. I think just about everybody in the world has SharePoint, and I think, the amount of content that's tagged correctly in SharePoint is probably, 1 to 5% if we're lucky. So it's sometimes a lot of companies that I work for, they have very difficult time finding information that's in SharePoint and all the different libraries and sites and all that. So what auto classification does, in this example, you see on the right-hand side here, this PII under this column, sensitivity. So in this example, we have an analytic, an auto classification for PII, so that when anybody uploads a document into SharePoint, the auto classification engine looks and sees if the PII analytic is being matched. If it does, it automatically goes into a workflow that sends it over here to the sensitive documents folder. And then it allows the people in the workflow to review that content and to see if it's harmful, if it's something that's that shouldn't be where where they wanted it to be. And again, it's just one of the applications that you can use auto classification for. Very simple one, but very powerful. Another example of auto classification, this is an HR example inside of SharePoint where these letters are coming in. And you can see on the left here, we have these different categories under salary letter, dollar amounts, name, sale, a title, date, company. So again, using this text analytics and auto classification, all of this content that's coming through, it can automatically be tagged, and you can see that no one would actually create tags for a dollar amount or title or any of these things. So you can kind of go beyond what normal companies do in being able to categorize and kind of organize their content to get the real true value out of it. And then here's another example. Again, this is in SharePoint. From a health standpoint. And here it's interesting because we created, if you look over here, these medicines, right? So we use the taxonomy to pull in the medicines so that we could do a dictionary lookup. So every time it would see one of the medicines in the dictionary, it would automatically tag it, and again bring those that metadata, into the tags here. And it can also find things like gender and your history, your alcohol abuse history, psychiatric reports. So again, not many companies are using this, and there's so much value. I mean, I don't know what organizations you all are in, but this really fits into any type of organization where you have content coming in and you really want to see kind of the meat behind that content. How can we leverage it? How can we make better business decisions from this content? What's it going to take? And this is just a great example. Sentiment analysis. Isn't this great? I love sentiment analysis. It's just such a cool little application. So here we see, I think this is a kind of a movie repository where we're doing sentiment on movies, and we see these positive expressions and we see these negative expressions. Now, if it was just looking at a particular word, you know, it would say, it would take this not like and it would put it over here because it's all like, right, or enjoyable. So the ability to do this deep parsing, again, it understands the words in a sentence, right? So it's able to kind of parse a sentence, understand the words, you know, and you're wanting to do things like, you know, if you see not in front of a word such as enjoyable or like, let's create, you know, that's a negative expression, so we'll tag it as that. So again, you know, sentiment analysis is just, I think it's critical today in any type of company that's doing marketing and sales. You really need to understand what your customers are saying. Customer is king, right? They're the ones buying your product. And if you start seeing a lot of folks giving you negative comments on your product, you better change something. I mean, for me, when I go to Amazon, I'm always looking at the you know, the likes and the dislikes. And I want to understand, you know, what's the problem with this, because I'm not going to buy it if other people are having problems with it. You know, I think Dell, I remember a story, I read a book on how Dell used some of this, and, you know, they actually were getting a bunch of negative comments on some of their equipment, and they actually worked with that social group, and they actually took their comments, they actually brought them into a community where they got more insight about what was going on, and they actually changed their product line, you know, from this social sentiment that was being evidenced. So again, very powerful. Everybody should be using it. It's really a pretty simple thing to implement in your company. And then this is sentiment from a search perspective. So I just wanted to show you, again, this is a very simple application, simple screen, but you can bring sentiment into your search application. So if you want to just search on positive or negative or neutral comments, so I could type in a product name, and then I can click on negative or positive, and I can understand those things. I can bring into my views. I can say, okay, anything over 50 views that has a negative comment I want to see. You know, if this thing has less than 10 replies and a positive, I want to see what people are saying about it. So it helps you to kind of, you know, condense this information when you combine it with search, and you have things like your products and your services that you can kind of pull together and see what people are saying. Very powerful application. Now, 360-degree views. I think this is the best thing since peanut butter right here. So I've been doing, in my 25 years, I've done a lot of knowledge management applications, and I think 360-degree views is really the future. It was something I tried to build way back in PwC when I was doing portals. We were doing what you called portlet-to-portlet communication. You're trying to link different entities together inside of a portal, and really this is a way to do it that's a whole lot easier than trying to create an application like that. So a 360-degree view is where you're crawling your unstructured content, and you're crawling your structured data, and you're pulling that in to an application where you're relating, you're associating this entity to all of these different aspects of your content. So we'll dive into this, but as you can see, there's a lot of different applications for this. Customers, right? You can have a 360-degree view of your customer, of any asset, of an employee, of a product. Potential uses, engineering, customer service, marketing. So we even had a 360-degree view of mining equipment, right? There was these hundreds of million of dollar equipment that were being used in mining, and we actually created a 360-degree view of that, so you could look at what's going on in that equipment, because if it's down, it's going to cost you, you know, $1 million a day or $2 million a day because you're not doing that mining. So the dashboard brought in all the logs of that equipment, and it put it in one view so you could actually see what is going on. So again, potential uses, engineering, customer service, marketing, and let's look at a couple examples here. So this is a 360-degree view of a customer. So here we see Sally on the left, or Janet, that's her name, Janet, and we can see her transaction history, right? So that's coming from an MDM or ERP type system, all of her purchases. We can see the customer's products that they own up here from MDM, right? So this is everything she owns. We can see the recent conversations. So this could be anything from emails like this exchange. We have Salesforce. We have customer service logs, right? Everything that comes in through there. So again, it's not just one repository you're looking at, but you're looking at the whole accumulation of, what Janet's been talking about as she's, working with your company. Then over here, we can take in the customer information from MDM. We can take in indexed third-party information. So this is kind of a LinkedIn history, but again, you can pull in anything from an outside. Again, this is just a crawler. We can crawl any type of social application or any type of, external network and pull that information in. Now, what makes this really productive? So think of it from a customer service standpoint. Today, customer service people usually have to look at a number of different applications. They would have to look at this purchase. They'd have to go into that MDM or ERP to find that purchase history. They'd have to, look at the recent conversations from their logs, and they'd have to, look at all these different repositories. Where here they have one single page, one dashboard, basically, to see everything related to this customer, and it's just it's a big benefit. And another big benefit, and I'll say that before I start moving into this, is the ability to, not really ability, but because you're crawling this information, you're not moving anything, right? So your MDM, your ERP, your document management, your social, all of that content is live and it's secure. This application is just using crawlers to index that content and bring it to the screen. So you're always getting the latest information at your fingertips. And it carries with it all of the security. So if you don't have the security to see something, you're not going to see it. So again, it follows all the business rules that you need to follow. And again, here, for a product, this is the Optimum Bond Fund, and we can get the product information from our PLM. We can bring in reports from our BI. We can bring in unstructured data from the intranet. We can find out the customers who own the product. We can even have an expert locator. That's a great knowledge management application, right? Let's find the experts who know this product that we can talk to. So again, 360-degree views are for me, and I talked about customer and product. This can be anything, right? So you really need to look at your business and see where this would be valuable, because it can. I really think it's the next generation of KM. And this is a 360-degree view of social media profile. So this is kind of a twist on 360-degree views, but we have all of this social media data out there today, right? We have Twitter, Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn, Pinterest. We have everything, and they're growing by the day, I think. In all that content, you can start to understand the buzz, the sentiment, the intent, the life events, the relationships. So what you're doing with this social media profile is you're creating a 360-degree view. You're pulling all of that content in. You're using analytics so that you can kind of parse that information so you can understand these personal attributes and the products or interests that they're looking at, the life events, the relationships. And you could do things like micro segmentation, right? So if you're not going to do anything else, you can do this segmentation and you can start to do campaign management, risk assessment, competitive intelligence, and that's fine as it stands. But if you can marry that with your internal enterprise data, right, your CRM, your contact center, your enterprise master data, you can do what we call entity resolution. So you're taking that person and you're trying to create a resolution as to what you have and try to match that to create this entity association, where then you can do things like new customer acquisition, customer retention, lead generation, all these different things. It brings you to the next level of kind of marketing and kind of voice of the customer, and it really helps you to kind of go to that next generation of marketing. Are you in compliance? Excuse me, I haven't talked this much in about a year, so I have to drink a little water. So big data. So recently I received a note in the mail from United Healthcare where they were hacked, right? And they said, your information's at risk. We're giving you a free subscription to identity protection software. You can, sign up, but you have to think, if these major databases and ERP applications are being hacked, how much easier is it going to be for big data that's sitting in Hadoop to be hacked, right? So that's kind of the idea here is, if you're using text analytics, you can look for PII, PCI, HIPAA type content, things from like social security numbers, credit card numbers, addresses, place of birth, health records, all of this stuff. It's very easy to find, as you saw earlier, right? We had all those little analytics that tag that content. So from the standpoint of kind of risk and violations and penalties, you really want to make sure that you're managing that information correctly. You want to know where it is. You want to make sure that you have the correct controls on it. And if it's sitting out there in Hadoop, you really want to think twice about that and at least protect yourself a little bit by finding where it is and what it is. Okay, so this is the kind of the next generation. This is the future which is happening now, right? And this is kind of the difference between a search and expert Q&A. And really this is, from my experience working at IBM, this is really about Watson for me. They've done such a great job in that Watson engine that it's doing some incredible things. So today with search, right, the decision maker has a question, he distills it to 2 or 3 keywords, he hits the search engine, and then the engine brings back the documents containing those keywords and delivers them. And, the decision maker has to read those documents. He has to really try to find the relevant documents, because if you haven't used analytics or any of this stuff, it's really difficult to find the stuff you're looking for. And if you haven't gotten rid of your rot, you might be finding documents that are too old or not relevant, So again, that reads the documents, you have to find the answers, and you have to find and analyze the evidence. So you're doing all of that work on your own, and it's pretty shaky when you think about all the content you have, all that big data, unstructured content that's laying out there. So the expert system is a little bit different, right? You ask a natural language question, then the expert system understands the question, it produces possible answers and evidence, it analyzes that evidence and computes a confidence level. And if you watched Watson on Jeopardy, if you haven't done that, just Google Watson and Jeopardy and you can watch the video. It's really amazing. But Watson would show a confidence level, how confident it was in the answers that it gave. And then this delivers the response, the evidence, and the confidence. And then the decision maker has to consider the answer and the evidence. So this is being used being used very largely in the health systems today, especially on cancer research and healthcare with doctors. They're able to get a lot better understanding of their information that a normal person could never be able to understand that content that this expert system's delivering to them. Now the reason I bring this up is because this is kind of a roadmap, I'd like to say, right? So cognitive exploration requires the ability to search, analyze, and interpret information. So from the search standpoint, we're talking about using this text analytics, right, to put all those meta tags on the content so you can do search in a way that you haven't done before that really helps you to get the right answers out of that. And then there's this content analytics, which is the analyze component, right, where you're mining this unstructured data to reveal the trends, patterns, insights. And then you go into the interpret stage where your cognitive services are being, brought in to augment the human expertise. And that's really kind of where Watson is, right, at that interpretive stage. So the reason for this is there's a roadmap. You have to start with text analytics, right? And using text analytics for search is a great way to start. That's really what you have to do. And then to bring in content analytics, to be able to begin to mine and reveal the trends and patterns and insights, that's the next step. And then you get to that interpret stage. So you really can't get to the interpret stage until you do these first 2 stages. So again, if you're thinking about this, think of it as a roadmap, right? I mean, it might be a 2, 4, 6-year roadmap, but if you start with search and text analytics, you drive that into your content analytics and you drive that into this interpretation stage. And really the applications are as many as you can think about, right? On the left here, I have drug discovery, crop science, product innovation, cancer research, patient treatment. But, when you look at Jeopardy, that Watson could answer just about any question. It was crazy. So a lot of value here. Again, I think this is the search. This is the kind of the future of where search is going to, this cognitive component. Okay, so getting started. I'm just going to do a few quick slides here. Let me check the time, see where I am. I'm going slower than I thought, so I'll kind of go through these real quick. So there's a couple things that are real critical for me in doing ECM. One is taxonomy, the other is governance, right? If you don't have taxonomy, it's almost impossible to do anything inside of an ECM system. You know, you use your taxonomy to do all this stuff. I'm not going to get into it because I'm out of time, but taxonomy is critical. Governance is critical, right? You have to have kind of you have to have your roles, you have to have your processes, you have to have your policies in place, and these are all things that, you know, from my standpoint, it's the foundational work. If you don't have taxonomy and governance, you're never going to get anywhere in your ECM capability. And then rot. Again, I wish I wasn't so long-winded, but you need to get rid of rot, right? This is a CGOC survey that was done. 69% for this, in this survey, they said that 69% was everything else. And really, that could be stuff that's hindering you from making good business decisions, right? You see all the duplicates, age, passes, pace, useful life, no business value. It's stuff that you need to take care of. And analytics can really help you to get to this. When I was at IBM, I created a 360-degree view of rot so that people could actually see what they're getting into, what they have. Okay, so to end this, use the phased approach, right? Don't try to boil the ocean. Find a business sponsor. You need someone to help get an agreement with you. Say, hey, this might be a good idea to do. Let's take a look at it, right? Do an assessment, understand the major pain points, start with a POC, proof of concept, and show quick wins. So I think I'm out of time. We at Big Lake Analytics, we're open to do a two-day free assessment workshop with you if you're interested. So, you know, please feel free to contact me. And Gary, I know we're just about out of time. Do we have any questions? Gary, you're probably still on mute.
Hi, actually, it looks like I can hear me?
Yes.
Okay. We don't have any questions, and so I allowed you to continue on. I think, oh, wait, we do have one question just came in. Where do we find an ontology? It's a good question. Frank, you want to talk about that a little bit? I mean, a lot of ways to interpret that question.
Yeah, well, Gary, since you're the taxonomy expert, I would, you know, for me, ontology is really about relationships, right? It's things like acronyms. It's, you know, so usually I've done myself and Gary both have done a lot of taxonomy implementations in our career. And, you know, when you're doing an assessment of your vocabularies, right, you're understanding the words and you're understanding the relationships between those words. And that's how you usually build an ontology, unless you're in a specific science where they, you know, sometimes you can purchase certain types of ontologies. And Gary, I'll let you take it from there.
Yeah, no, exactly. The whole discussion around the difference between a taxonomy and an ontology, but you know, as you point out, the ontology focuses on the relationships between concepts. There are commercial taxonomies available, but I haven't seen very many commercial ontologies. There are industry ontologies in certain disciplines, particularly in medicine, that are evolving. But and there are in different industries some efforts going on to create ontologies that can be shared across the industry. But most of what I've seen in most organizations, if they're ready to use an ontology, and it does take a little more sophistication in getting value out of one and maintaining one, they are building it on their own. And in terms of finding it within an organization, I kind of interpret that as you know, how do you identify what's really important to have in the ontology? It does require a lot of involvement of the business, and that's really a critical success factor on projects that result in taxonomies or ontologies. You really have to do one that's fit to the purpose of the organization. I think another question just came in. Can you share the name of the tool you use to automatically tag content in SharePoint.
Yes, it's
Yeah.
yeah, it's Smart Logic. Go to their site. They have a great auto classification tool there, and it really doesn't just work for SharePoint. It'll plug into Documentum, Alfresco, OpenText. So great tool.
Yeah. And the tool is actually called Semaphore. The company name is Smart Logic, but it is one that we both have experience with, and it is a good tool. There are other tools out there, particularly in the SharePoint space. Some of the tools are designed to automatically tag as you do migrations. So if you're in a situation of migrating from even from 2010 to 2013, or from other types of content management systems like OpenText, some of the migration tools include capabilities to tag. So Metavis, for instance, is one to check out.
Great.
Okay, I think that looks like the questions, and we're at the top of the hour now. So I just want to thank everybody for coming. We hope you found this of interest and can join us in future webinars.
And my email is down here. I think you have it in the invite. If anybody has any questions or anything else they want to know, please feel free to reach out. And thank you so much for listening to my long-winded talk today.
Okay, thanks everyone.
Thank you.
Bye. Have a good afternoon.